Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today is Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. It's 5:30 p.m. and this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. We're going to start by saying the pledge, if you'll join us. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we'll let you know if you do. Okay, roll call please, Randy.
Trustee Winslow.
Present.
Trustee Kidda.
Here.
Trustee Leighton.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Treasurer Rickower.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Kangas, our attorney Roger Zappa, our finance director Kim Clark is here, our fire chief Dan Shanahan is here, and committee members here are Tom Bronken from the Library Township Advisory Committee. Everyone else is, we're good.
Thank you. Anybody wish to address the board before we get started? Come on up and give us your name and address, please.
I know that. Ernie Johnson, 1962 West Fair Avenue. I'd like to reserve time for item 8D,
8D.
after your discussion.
After?
After your discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address the board? Okay, we'll be going then. We need approval of the consent agenda, which tonight consists of approval of regular meeting minutes of February 5th, 2025. We have bills payable in the amount of $276,023.78. I put in Respect Marquette County meeting notes. I guess I put them in twice. I'm sorry. From January 29. We have the activity report from January for the sheriff, abbreviated packet from solid waste, which we had a meeting just at 4 o'clock that I wasn't able to attend, and Respect Marquette County minutes from January 29. No other correspondence, and we have January 25 financial statements.
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'm not aware of any conflicts of interest, so we just need approval of the rest of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So first up is our library report. Mr. Tom. Yeah.
Good evening. I attended the library meeting last night, and the special presentation was by Amy Selman, who's the Adult Services Department head. She does collections in the reference desk, but there are a lot of other services that she mentioned that I thought I'd just bring up. People online might be interested as well. They do printing and copying at a fairly reasonable price. They have all tax forms for people to do tax forms. They're working with United Way this year to provide volunteer income tax assistance. You can get passports there too, and they actually get reimbursed by the State Department for providing that service. They proctor tests for people who are taking online courses and need to take a test for that course. They have several reading groups. They have tech services for seniors who have trouble with their phone or their computer or whatever they want to work with. And the reference desk will then answer any kind of questions that people have, and sometimes they help also with tech with their online applications, some of the things they offer. And so I'm just going to talk about that a little bit. They have the regular collections, books and CDs and DVDs and magazines, but more and more people are starting to like to watch things online and use online media that the library offers. And it's kind of a conundrum for them because they know how much it's going to cost to buy a book or 5 books of the same type, whatever it is, that's the fixed cost. But with online media, when somebody signs up for it, it's on demand, and they have to pay for it after the fact. So if a lot of people are very interested in something, or a lot of, interested in things in general, the cost can grow beyond what they were expecting. So right now, they're trying to figure out how they're gonna manage that. So far, they've managed it okay, but it could be a problem in the future. So, so that's the big issue going forward probably for this department, I think. The three things that people are really interested in is Hoopla, that's audiobooks, ebooks, movies and music, Canopy, which is movies and films, and then the most popular one is Libby, audiobooks, ebooks, and magazines. And if people want to learn more about that, they can go to the library. The reference desk will help them with that. Then the other piece of information at that meeting was that they're starting the strategic plan process. It seemed like they were just doing that, but it's time again. So they're forming a subcommittee to discuss how it's going to be done, and it will consist of 2 board members, and then there will be 2 TAC members as well on that. So townships will get an input into that. I think Paul Marin did it last time when they did the strategic plan. So. Okay, that's all the report I have. Anybody have any questions?
That's pretty good. Any questions for Tom? Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
thanks.
Appreciate you coming. All right, I don't see Christopher. And Anthony? Yeah. Antonio, do you know if he was coming? Did he say? Did you see Christopher?
I have not spoken to him. I'm not
Okay.
sure if he was going to be
He
here.
I
did
didn't mean to
send
put
his
you on the spot.
presentation this morning.
Yeah, he said he was gonna talk about how,
I can text him and see if he's coming.
okay, maybe he mixed up the time. Thank you. We'll just set that aside for a minute. Let's jump to the fire department.
Hey, good evening. Briefly go over some notes. You do have a report that I had submitted. I'll go over training in January. We trained with Chocolate, the Rapid Task Force. And you're probably going, well, what is, I don't know. And I don't want to repeat myself. I don't think I've ever brought it up, but maybe some of you are wondering, some of you know, but I'll just be brief. It's a task force that's for an active shooter or an MCI in the area. It's something that Lee Gould, the chief of Marquette Township, and he's also the fire marshal at Northern Michigan University, has been putting together. And we've been training a little bit with law enforcement and the local fire departments. And we also, with Chocolate that night, did a rapid intervention crew, and that is usually a crew of 4 firefighters that are basically there just to help a firefighter if he's in duress or stranded, he needs help. Just in case you're wondering, well, what is a rapid intervention crew or RIT crew, whatever. I thought, well, maybe a good time to tell you. Run volume is up a little bit, probably 18% this year compared to last year at this time. We did have 1 structure fire in the township. It was in Forestville. I will tell you, it was a little bit hard to first locate and to get to, just because of the roads. And I was unaware that even though the Nequaminan does plow very well past the railroad tracks, Marquette County Road Commission only plows to the railroad tracks in Forestville. I mean, the Nequaminan does an excellent job up past the power lines. Then if that's just up to the owners, So if we can get trucks back there, we were able to. It took us a while. We did get stuck in one of the larger trucks. Also like to thank County Sheriff's Department. We would have probably have passed the house because it was about 1,200 feet off the road, and the deputies were parked right at the end of the guy's driveway with his lights on, which, oh, that must be it. So that was a huge help because we probably would have passed it to begin with. We were assisted by Negaunee Township that night also. We called them for a tanker, and our usual Marquette City and Chocolate Township with our auto aid. Membership's holding steady. We do have quite a few new people. We lost a couple fairly experienced firefighters recently. They moved out of Marquette Township. I will be bringing to the board, hopefully with not your next meeting, but the second meeting in March, Mavis. I know I talked about it probably a year ago now. Attorney Zappa has reviewed it. And I believe he saw no legal issues, I believe, and I'll let Attorney Zappa address that. but I would like to bring that to the board for your approval in a month, so in 2 more weeks. Or not, not the next meeting, but the meeting after. And once again, just a reminder on your house numbers, especially if you've got your house number in your mailbox out at the end of the road, they're all covered with snow, please clear them. It does help a lot if they're cleared up. Oh, and then the common one was canceled this year due to lack of snow. That's something we usually participate in. It's a good training day for us also. We get the snowmobile out and get to do a little bit of training, but it was canceled this year. So.
Do you work with the UP 200 at all?
No, not at all. No.
Okay, any questions
Any
from the
questions,
chief?
anything?
I just have one.
Oh.
What is MCI, the abbreviation for?
Matt, MCI, was that in my notes?
You said
Mass
MC.
casualty incident?
Oh, yeah, you said MCI. I
Oh, I'm
didn't know
sorry,
what that
yeah, I
was.
didn't think, okay, yeah. That's what that, yeah, the rapid task force could also be used for that also.
And Dan,
What is-
what's Mavis? Is that software?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know, yeah, sorry. I know, I don't, yeah, I guess because I know and we talk about it all the time, and thank you for the question. Mutual aid box alarm system.
Oh, okay.
It's an auto, not an auto, it's a mutual aid agreement with other departments. And this way, like, all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted legally. And it's saying that if we request, just say, Michigami Fire Department for a tanker, if they're signed up for this, they will come if they can, if they have the manpower and a truck available. And same with us. If we sign up, we're agreeing we will help if we can. So yeah, sorry, good question.
That's every year, right? They sign that, or is it every
Pardon me?
couple of years? How often do we do that?
Mavis,
Oh, yeah,
once it's signed, it's indefinite.
okay, we signed one.
That one we have not. The Mavis one, Attorney Zappa just reviewed it
Okay,
recently.
it's a different one.
And he was really quick response with it. But it's something that I'm not sure who would sign, the clerk or the supervisor would sign. But, yeah, but then it goes to the county and they agree and then it goes to the state. It's a good agreement, I believe.
So how's our fire truck sale going? Nowhere?
I know, it's depressing.
Oh, well,
It is, no, that's a good question. And it's not going well, it's a little slow. I think we were hoping for a little bit more. It's still in the garage.
oh,
Okay.
so it's still for sale.
It's still for sale, yeah, we were hoping for a little more.
We'll be happy.
Interest?
Pardon me?
Has there been interest?
They're very, yeah, pardon me?
Very limited, or?
Very limited in, but if you look at the websites, and I guess, I just thought because it's well-kept truck, I was hoping to get more. And what we're leaving on the truck, but they are very old. We were hoping to get a little more money, and I think the only person that's sincerely interested with the biggest proposal is he's just gonna turn around and sell it. He's gonna clean it up and sell it. So, but it's still inside, but we do need to move it. So we're just gonna have to do it. It's only worth what you can get for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know. That's hard. I know. You're right. You're right. Get rid of it, but it's hard just to give it away. It's a good truck.
Okay,
All
maybe
right.
somebody will hear.
Yeah.
Never know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, that'd be
Appreciate
great.
you coming. All right, Public Works, do you have Lenny on?
Lenny is on vacation, but I can cover for him to the best of my abilities. I'm not going to be as polished as he is. I guess the biggest thing that you need to be aware of currently is we had a low-pressure force main on Fair Avenue just east of Vandenboom freeze up on us last week. So that started creating some problems for a bunch of grinder stations out there. After the third failure, we knew we had more than just grinder problems. So we, DPW contacted Oberstar. They came and dug it yesterday. And then the city came with their steamer and ran the steamer up the line, thawed out the frozen piece, and everything is back to normal now, other than having to repave the road sometime once the plants open back up. They put in a ton of overtime, because when this was happening, they had to yank the grinder pumps and actually pump them by hand multiple times a day, throughout the weekend. So there will be a bunch of overtime from it. Not much we can do about it. Our pipe froze underground, and until we could get it thawed out, I almost said unthawed. We've heard that before. They had to do everything manually. Found out some other issues in the meantime. We had a cleanout cap that had cracked in one of our cleanout manholes. That created another leak. I think everything is functioning fine now. Kudos to those guys. They also wanted me to give a shout out to Mark Curran and one of his employees who helped them televise the sewer with Mark Curran's sewer camera. We tried to rent one, but the head wouldn't fit in the pipe. It was too big. And Mark happened to be going by and said, "I have one. You can use it."
Thanks,
Actually
Mark.
brought it to them, and they were a great help. So kudos to Mark and his employee.
Great. Any questions on that? Okay, thanks, appreciate it. Planning, we got Jason's report.
So I can read that into the,
Sure, go ahead.
the ZBA met on 1/30/2025. It was an organizational meeting, and they elected their officers. There is a scheduled update, hopefully from our attorney, on the long-year development. The Planning Commission met on 1/12/25. They approved a duplex land use at 1953 Warner Street. The amended contract with our SEH to include one additional steering committee meeting, and then the staff and the Planning Commission will present the master plan to the public. So, and there was no additional cost for this. The balance of the master plan update draft chapters are expected in March, so we should see those soon. They met with the assessing staff to streamline the zoning compliance approvals in order to get them to assessing and on the tax roll as soon as possible. The annual township business license are still being administered by Planner Powers, with most of them being completed. The proposed modern car wash, there's a proposed modern car wash detail facility to replace the Jasmine restaurant property, and it's very early in the planning stage. There is a proposed Jersey Mike's sandwich shop to be the third tenant in the Verizon Dunkin' Donuts strip mall, and more details will follow. The staff has been reviewing existing zoning ordinances for proposed update once the master plan is complete. And I've additionally that we're waiting to see the blight ordinance revisions that we sent to Attorney Zappa, and then the blight ordinance hopefully will be here soon to our board.
Great,
That's it.
good. Good for that update. Thanks for reading that. Okay, our attorney report. Speaking as an attorney,
Well, the blight ordinance revisions were sent week before last from my office.
Okay.
There's been some back and forth, give and take on primarily the junk vehicle content of that and what's going to be encompassed within it. But that's, it left my desk, incorporating some questions, some answers to some questions that the planning commission had. And since last month, I took a look at a question on Downtown Development Authority board member eligibility. We also had a question from the DDA chair regarding the impact or potential impact of the housing development on our 5-acre parcel if it ever occurs, which we answered. There has been a question or two along the lines with the Veterans Home facility that's being constructed here shortly. And I reviewed the flow track parking lot proposal for the pavilion area off the Well Road. And I also did review the mutual aid box alarm system, or MABUS agreement that the fire chief alluded to. And had one question on the Forestville PUD from the zoning administrator that I provided an answer to a while back. And there may be more that aren't coming to mind, but those are some of the major issues that crossed my desk since the last report I gave last month.
Good deal. Any questions for Roger? John?
I just need to say one thing. We usually bombard him the Friday before a board meeting, which is really poor planning. And almost every time he responds by the time we get here. And I just want to say thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Community linkage.
Nope, Chris is here.
Oh, hi, Chris. You want to jump in?
Sure, I mean, if it's okay.
Absolutely.
I apologize for being late, guys.
Appreciate you coming. Come on up.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, thanks for your flexibility. I ended up triple booked, and I thought I could make it all work, so.
I got the pointer there for press down. That should move the, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, hey, everyone. It's good to see you all again. I want to first off thank Lynn for scheduling this annual update for the LSCP. I think some of you have probably seen most of what I'm about to tell you today, but then we'll talk about specific township activities and the way that the township is engaged with the LSCP as well over the last year. But for those of you who don't know me, just really quick, Christopher Germain, I'm the CEO of the Lake Superior Community Partnership. I've been in this role almost 3 years now, which is, it feels like 10 some days, and other days it feels like 3 weeks. So it just really depends how you look at it, but it's all been really good stuff going forward. So what I've got in here is a handful of updates on key initiatives and strategies, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for us as you go through. So first off and foremost, most folks kind of know the LSCP of the last 25 years, right? The organization formed out of the closure of K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base, merging multiple chambers together, and then kind of struggling with its identity for about 25 years as it was like, was it an economic development organization? Was it a chamber? Was it both? Was it something else? So in 2023, we did a strategic plan update where we tried to answer that question. We're like, are we a chamber, or are we an economic development organization, or are we a consulting firm? What are we? And I honestly really hope that we just be one of those things. Well, what we heard from folks is that everyone else had their niche and we needed to be the nimble ones. We had to be the flexible ones that could respond to stuff as things changed in the economy, as business needs change, as local government needs changed. So that meant we had to change our structure at the LSCP. So you see up here on the screen right now that the big change to the organization is that we now have that top level, which is a 501c6, so it's the LSCP component that everyone's always known to some degree. And then we took all of our services and we actually put them into 3 different buckets. The long-term plan is that you'll ultimately be able to invest in those individual buckets, right, based on what you're really interested in. But right now they are Economic Alliance, which is long-term economic development work. So think housing, air service, childcare, infrastructure, long-term business planning, and things like that. The business network is the chamber side of the LSCP. After the closure of the West End Chamber, after the closure of the City Chamber, it made a lot of sense that we just had to re-embrace that chamber aspect of what we do, but we didn't want it to take away from the economic development side that we had built up over the years. So we've created effectively a chamber within the LSCP, and we're in the process of building that up. Then the third arm is professional services, and that's contract work. So probably the most common contract most folks know about is the City of Ishpeming, which actually contracts directly with the LSCP to provide Ishpeming-specific economic development services throughout the year. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those buckets going forward. But I also want to point out that this is our most professional photo we have of the team. So it's actually really great. If anyone has historically interacted with a team, you may know that the LSCP for a long time built this image of professionalism, and I've heard it described maybe in some other not so friendly terms. We've really worked to make the LSCP a lot more accessible to folks, right? As we've had other partners rise up in the economic development field like InvestUP and Smart Zone, it's actually allowed us at the LSCP to refocus locally on Marquette County, which means we really view ourselves as the boots on the ground. We're the folks who are out meeting with businesses, whether they're large or small. We're the folks who are at local government meetings. We're the folks who are looking at Marquette County specific issues and trying to drive regional and state resources towards those issues and build those partnerships going forward. So when I started 3 years ago, we were 8 folks. We're now up to about 12 or 13, depending on how you count them. So we've grown pretty large as a team. The key that we've added are the small business support hub positions, a small business promotions position, additional community economic development positions, and then some operations support for the LSCP, so that all the projects that we'll talk about here in a minute, we actually have the capacity to do them now based on those additional team folks. So this is our strategic plan that has 5 external focus areas and then 3 internal. The first one, though, is really, I think, the key and really shows that shift. So it's no surprise that an economic development organization would focus on businesses, right, as a strategic area of focus. What we're going to notice on the first one is that it says retaining and growing our existing businesses. It doesn't say attracting new large-scale businesses. Now, that's not to say that if somebody comes to us at the LSCP and says, hey, we want to locate in Marquette Township or somewhere in Marquette County, we're going to help them do that, obviously. But we don't take any of the dollars that are given to us by our partners or through contracts or other areas and spend that going to conferences and flying all over the country to try to far-flung chances that we might land a 100 job. Instead, we try to come to our existing businesses and help them grow, right? And help them create those jobs right here. You're seeing the results of that right in the township, right, with some of the expansions that we've seen. So that's focus area number 1 for us. Focus area number 2 for us is creating vibrant communities. Again, this idea that people are going to choose where they want to live first. Quite frankly, it's happening more and more. So having communities that feel stable, that feel prosperous, that people have strong emotional connections to is really important. So that's why you're seeing us work on issues like childcare and housing. We're working on placemaking issues. We're looking at infrastructure issues. All of those are to create the types of places that people ultimately want to live and then they want to invest in, right? Or they create their jobs or they grow their businesses. But it really starts at feeling super confident, right, in the place that you're sitting in today, that's the place you want to make that time or financial investment in. The third one's around encouraging entrepreneurship. So this is obviously a focus that we've had for a long time, but one of those partners I mentioned earlier, Smart Zone, has actually really stepped in and they're able to fill a lot of that role. So between them and Accelerate UP and Northern Initiatives and NMU, we're actually able to play more like air traffic control at the LSCP. So we provide some level of basic entrepreneurship service, but we don't do the heavy hand-holding, the coaching, the one-on-one long-term support, but we can connect any business in the township or the county to those support of our other partners going forward, so they don't have to figure out what door to go in. We can still be that singular point of entry. Fourth is around advocating for shared interests. We'll talk about some of those, including one that I know is very applicable to the township here. And then the fifth one is around connecting and informing our members. So we used to do a lot of networking events themselves just for the sake of networking. That's really important. But we've now tied all of that to educational efforts as well. So if any of you have been to Breakfast in Business, right, you get there, you get some networking, you get a hot breakfast, but you also learn, right? And you do that at a lot of our other events as well. So you leave not only having new connections, but also new knowledge. That was something we heard big time when we were doing our strategic planning was people didn't want to come to nighttime events for the sake of coming to nighttime events. They wanted to actually feel there was value there. So we listened on that, and then we have those 3 internal ones that you'll see kind of there in the corner. Those are just around stabilizing our finances, investing in the team itself, which quite frankly experienced a ton of turnover prior to a few years ago, and then actively communicating our message, doing things like this tonight. So you understand what you're investing in when you invest in us. So this gives you the idea of the business development services and the impact those had. These are actually 23 numbers. I can tell you that the 24 number we just got, and it's 613 businesses that we interacted with. So we actually blew our 23 numbers out of the water, even though we had fewer people on staff throughout the year and more initiatives. So we're still seeing a really big uptick in entrepreneurship. We're seeing a big uptick, of course, in talent challenges for businesses as well. But we're feeling good about that. And this is really the backbone that then informs the rest of our business development services that we have. We meet with a number of businesses in the township, obviously along with the city, all along the 41 corridor, out to Gwynn, Republic, Big Bay. We go everywhere throughout the county to make sure we're sitting down with those businesses. One of the other big things that we did this past year is create the Small Business Support Hub. So that was a $3.4 million investment by MEDC. The LSCP serves as the center point for the Central UP Hub, but it covers 7 counties. So that is one of those regional roles that we still play. We have folks on our team that then go out to those other counties, but it's all supported through state hub money. Quite frankly, most of those resources end up here in Marquette, right? Just because we have most of the jobs and most of the investment and most of the people. So it made a lot of sense for us to base the hub here going forward. But what's really exciting about that is really the direct grants to small businesses. So we were basically able to control a regional pot of money for small business grants. So the first round did up to $5,000 a grant. The second round that just closed is $10,000 per grant. And we'll have 2 more rounds that will each be about $100,000 in total, spread over those 7 counties. I actually would have loved to put way more than $426,000 towards direct grants on there, but MPC wouldn't let us. There was a formula that they said, this is exactly how much you can spend on direct grants, and the rest of it has to be spent on technical assistance. So we use that to do all of the other things, including helping NMU build their Main Street Academy, buying new software tools for businesses in our region to access that are way too expensive for us to otherwise access on our own, and also to expand all of those one-on-one visits. So we now have 4 on-the-ground navigators that operate in those 7 counties. Again, centralized out of Marquette County for the other 7 counties. We also did a target market analysis, which is something that, of course, the township invested in and Lynn participated on, and providing us feedback on there. I know some folks will look at that data and you'll see that the target market analysis suggests that the county could support 980 new units every single year, 1,445 rehabilitated units. Those are really high numbers, right? I want to be really clear. I don't think we're building 10,000 units over the next 5 years in Marquette County. But it did get us over this initial hump that some developers weren't even convinced there was demand here. Like, we knew it, we could feel it, right? We felt there was some sort of mismatch. So this TMA actually puts numbers to the gut feeling a lot of us were feeling, that yes, we need more people. In order to get more people, we need more housing. So now when developers come and they start to have those initial conversations, they can look at this data instead, and they can move immediately to sort of phase 2 diligence of doing their own project-specific due diligence and number crunching to figure out whether it works or not. We were the first county in the Upper Peninsula to do a full TMA. A lot of credit goes actually to the Land Bank Authority and all the local governments. I believe there were 7 or 8 local governments that invested, as well as the LCP, the Community Foundation, the DTE Foundation, and others that made this possible. So this kind of gives you an idea of some of the data that's in there, including this idea that there's a housing mismatch in the county, right? So the gray is supply, blue is demand. So again, nothing that is totally a surprise, but you have to keep in mind too that this is county-wide. So we're actually able to kind of pick it up and you could say, hey, we're gonna build mostly new detached single-family housing over here because that's what fits, and we're gonna try to put more mixed-use, missing middle housing along 41 or in Nagani or Ishpeming or the city of Marquette. But we now have that big county-wide view, and then we also have 6 areas that are sub-drilled down into. So the city, West End, Quinn, and other areas. So it's been really, really helpful data for us to figure out. This gives you a good idea of some of that data that's in there. It talks about home value tolerances and rent tolerances. I know you've had plenty of these conversations related to some of the housing projects that you've talked about, so I'm not gonna dig into those super deep. But what I'm really excited about is after we had all this data, we had to figure out what to do next. And so we're like, okay, how do we actually get to 10,000 units theoretically over 5 years? We didn't think we had the right people at the table. So we had an intergovernmental housing task force that really led the charge on the TMA, and they did a really fantastic job. But we needed the private sector and the nonprofit sector at the table to actually build some of the housing. So we formed an organization called Housing Now. It exists underneath the LSCP Foundation, so it's technically a 501c3 initiative that brings those folks together every quarter. They look at our goals and our strategies about how we're actually going to build all of that. So we don't just have a singular focus on building some more housing. It's not just about bringing more money. It's not just about finding more people. It's not just about streamlining regulation. It's all of these things combined that really have to move the needle on housing. So Lynn actually sits on Housing Now for us, so she has to listen to me talk about this every quarter, and then all the stuff in between as well. But it's really starting to move the needle, right? And we're starting to talk about some of those projects, and it's doing things like supporting small emerging developers in the county as well, which is a really cool initiative that we don't really see anywhere else in the state. So we know we're getting some interest from larger developers, but we know a lot of our problem we're gonna have to solve on our own. So building all of that and supporting that pipeline is really vital to us. Another big initiative for us over the past year was Childcare Spark. So actually one of the graduates of Childcare Spark, which creates in-home childcare businesses, is right here in Marquette Township. So We're excited about that. We've had 7 folks go through it, 6 successfully start businesses. The 7th one unfortunately had an unexpected change in their personal life and ended up moving out of the area. But they're actually, our loss is someone else's gain downstate because they're still opening a business downstate. So we're helping as a state overall. But Spark, we're hopeful, fingers crossed, will start to become a regional program. We applied for $100,000 in grants a few weeks ago to start piloting it in other counties as well. So right now, though, there is still money. So if you know anyone in the township that's interested in starting in a home-based childcare business, there's actually money to help them do that right now. It really won't cost them a penny to go through Spark itself. And there's help for finding other capital investments and other support to get them through. What I'm really proud about with this program is actually, it was built with a community foundation, great start to quality. So it's not just about creating a business. It's also about creating that high quality business so that children are getting the best childcare. So 20 years from now, right when they graduate and they go on, they had that really strong foundation and start, as well as their parents were able to go back into the workforce, right, and know that their child was cared for. We got the National American Planning Association's Economic Innovation and Best Practices Award for this program, which is like the longest name for an award ever. But it was really cool. We got to go to Minneapolis. We had places like New York calling us to ask us how we were doing this program. So we felt really cool about that. And then the last big initiative that we had over the last year, of course, is air service. Has anyone taken Minneapolis yet? Anybody? No? Okay, so I booked actually my first flight a couple of days ago out to Minneapolis. So many of you know that Minneapolis flight did exist for a number of years prior to 2022. We got caught up in all the consolidation and talent shortages of the airlines, right? Every rural airport across the country got hit by this. We had to spend about a year gathering data with our partners, doing surveys with our business communities, and ultimately flying out to Utah to meet with SkyWest after talking to Delta directly to make the case that Marquette Sawyer Airport is worth investing in, right? That it can really be the regional airport for the Upper Peninsula. But we, of course, have a big problem, or big challenge, I should say. We're also the only airport that doesn't get millions of dollars in federal subsidies every single year. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, with some of what's happening at the federal level right now, that might actually work to our advantage, right? Depending on what ultimately happens in the budget. But we knew it was a problem. We knew that we were never going to undercut the pricing of some of those other airports that are literally getting more than $30 million a year between the other 5 airports to subsidize air service. We're able to support air service on our own without any of those subsidies, but we needed better service. We needed better time service. We needed more frequent service. So we ultimately got Minneapolis back. That only goes until the end of July as a guarantee. So it's really important that if you know anyone who's like even thinking about booking a flight, so at least check it out, right? If they previously booked a flight out of Escanaba, see if maybe it's better. We've been doing some price comparisons, and when you factor in the time it takes to travel to Escanaba or Iron Mountain or other places, actually some of our flights are just better dollar for dollar in terms of comparisons now. And you get to Minneapolis in the morning versus having to go in the afternoon. And it's now entirely possible to get out of Marquette Sawyer in the morning and fly back in through Detroit in the evening. It's a tight day, but you can do it. So we've heard stories of folks telling us they've saved like 14 hours of travel because of this flight. So we're feeling really good about it. But again, right now it's backed by a $700,000 minimum revenue guarantee that we've worked with the county to get through MDOT. We've drawn down a little more of that than we're comfortable drawing down really early on there. So it's really important that we're getting folks on that flight. And if you haven't looked at Sawyer lately, just go look at it, right? And even just searching it drives it up in the algorithms, right, when you're doing the Google searches, and that really helps us go forward. So that is not the end of what's coming for air service. We have soft commitments to bring back a second Detroit flight. We also have commitments to re-look at that scheduling with Minneapolis to see if there's a way to bump it back a little tiny bit so you can still fly in from the morning from Minneapolis as well. So we're working with them. We have a long relationship with SkyWest. We have a long relationship with the airport. And I want to give a lot of credit. You'll see some of the folks down there in the lower right there who made it possible really through the LCP Foundation, but Eagle Mine, Travel Marquette, the airport itself, Invest UP. A lot of folks have really put a lot of work into this behind the scenes, but now it's out there in public. We really need folks to be considering Sawyer Airport to be our main focus. Another initiative that you're all very familiar with in the township as well, of course, is our trail system out here. So we know, roughly, conservatively speaking, the economic impact of the trail system is over $40 million a year. Supports almost 400 ongoing jobs every single year in the county, And that's, like I said, a very conservative estimate. But for the last couple of years, the LSCP has been working with Eagle Mine and a number of trails organizations to try to create a sustainable county-wide comprehensive trails master plan. Because we know most of these trails are actually very fragile, right? Some of them are literally based on handshake agreements. There's no paper record of access or anything. So as we saw in the Western UP, when one of the snowmobile trails got delinked, right, and there was massive chaos over there, we don't want it to happen here. So really what we're working on is try to stabilize the trail system, understand that it's the economic engine for this area, or one of them. And so working on that, but working collaboratively with all of the trails organizations, with the LSCP again kind of being the epicenter of that work. I will say thank you to the township for hosting, I think, our actual kickoff for the trails event. It was probably 23. It's been a hot second since we did that. But that first meeting over in the community room was really helpful in bringing folks together and to the table who I think were otherwise a little skeptical of that project when we first started. So, and then community development is another big area that we've built up over the last couple of years. I think is particularly applicable to local governments. And so you've all seen me at a few more meetings than you maybe have seen any of my predecessors before, and that's very intentional. My background is in community development and local government, so I came from MEDC, but I came from that side of the house. We're also working on expanding our capacity, I should say, to better support you all with grant development and grant research. We have an AmeriCorps position at the LSCP for the first time ever, and their sole focus is on building local government support and grant support. So we have them till the end of September or the end of August, so we're kind of figuring out how we can make that a permanent position because we know the need is there. But we're hoping we can kind of be the facilitator that maybe can bring local governments together to maybe co-fund a position that we can all share of some type. So more to come on that. We're also working around fostering that dialogue between public and private and nonprofit sectors. You're probably very familiar with that role of ours. We're going to talk about housing and childcare. We're also supporting training for local officials now. So that was, again, another really nerdy thing I was really proud of last year. We offered to pay for Citizen Planner for officials who came from local governments who were members of the LSCP, like the township. So I think we're going to do that again. So if you missed it this past year, there'll be another opportunity in 25 to do that. And then we're continuing to expand our local government network just in general, right? We know that all of you work together on a regular basis, and we're trying to come to the table, kind of put some of that history behind us of that traditional business developments and really focus on that comprehensive community economic development effort. So related to that, you'll see two big changes for this year. Number one, quarterly communications from us dedicated to local government issues. So we're working on the first one now. You'll probably see it late March or early April, but we're really excited about that. And then in 2025, in October of this year, we're going to launch our first ever Marquette County specific local economic development summit. So it's called P3MQT because my team told me I needed something catchy. I don't actually know what that means, but it's got a cool fancy name, but it's going to be at the Innovation Hall at the NMU Jacobetti Center. It's going to be invite only. It's going to be free. So every local government's going to get invites to there to be able to come, plus key private sector business leaders, profit leaders, community service club leaders, all to talk specifically about Marquette County challenges and how we can, we always have those regional conversations here. We don't have a lot of like our own unique challenges and solution conversations. So that's what we're trying to do with the LSCP. So we're excited about that. And then the last big thing, of course, is advocacy. Last year was busy. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, and maybe it feels like the last few weeks have also been very busy, but we worked on things from working on emergency funds to address the lack of snow and the unfortunately creative ways that we had to do to get around federal declarations, to, of course, following the drama around the FLSA salary thresholds for businesses that went all over the place and ended up right back where they started in the middle of the year. Sick leave and minimum wage, of course, was a key issue for us, and I don't know if anyone has heard today, but there's heavy negotiations happening at the State House. We're expecting a new version of SB 8 to come out tonight, and we're expecting the House to potentially vote on 4002 tonight as well. If they do, they might actually finally put the sick leave and minimum wage stuff to rest. We're hearing the backup plan is just to defer it, to kick the football down until July, so they can work on the budget. So we're hoping for the first one, right, that they'll just do it and be done with it, but we'll see. We worked on the state budget. We saw all sorts of economic development bills, and in dark stores, which we know is a huge issue for you all as a township. I'm really proud to say that we were the only chamber and economic development organization in the state that we're aware of that sent comments down to Lansing and advocated for the changes that came before the committee. Right? We were against the state chamber, the U.S. chamber, the Small Business Association, the Business Federation. They all came out swinging against it. And we came out and said, no, this has a real life impact. It's not fair. So we got the Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance to come along with us. Not quite as strong, but we were that leading voice on that. And it's only because we've talked to you all and we've worked with you all and you've given us good, helpful data to work on that issue. So thank you for doing that for us. And also for all the other feedback that you've given us around issues like housing and short-term rentals. I know we've had some conversations about sick leave and other issues that are still up there. So we are continuing to do that work. We're a little distracted maybe by some of the federal stuff right now, but the state stuff is still really, really vital, and we're continuing to work on that. And then lastly, I just always like to end it with a bunch of pictures, which I think tell the bigger story of everything that we've done. So you'll see up there on the left, just really quick, that is an emerging developer event. So again, the work we've been doing around there. We opened the West End Economic Hub in August, which was after the unfortunate collapse of the chamber out in the West End. We were able to rebuild that relationship and turn that unfortunate situation into something really positive for the West End. So we feel great about that. That on the right is my husband. We bought a house. We're staying for a while. So we did match on Maine with the city of Ishpeming. We've been active in the Rural Development Partners Network. We've been at all sorts of conferences. We walked the bridge with the lieutenant governor. We launched a breakfast and business event series that I talked about earlier. We were a part of master plans. We held a small business celebration for the first time ever. We had over 100 people at that inaugural event, which was really exciting. So we'll definitely doing that one again. We spent a lot of time again on policy and advocacy. We welcomed Higashiomi from Japan to join us at the LCP. We went to SkyWest as we talked about. We did economic development strategy for the city of Negaunee. So they actually asked us to do that project we're really proud of. We worked on the UP energy study issues as well and submitted a lot of comments and advocacy around that. And then we got our first chief morale officer. That's Woody in the lower right. So he is an adopted blue heeler from UPAWS that my husband just came home with one day. And now he belongs to the LCB. So it's really exciting, but he makes the team a lot happier. So the LCB is always like drinking from a fire hose. I really wish I had a more streamlined way to talk about it. But I think the big message is the LCP in the last couple of years has completely turned around the way it operates, the way it thinks, and the way it builds its partnerships across really across all those spectrums, including working with local governments left and right. So to those of you guys who've been to LSCP events, thank you. To those of you who have worked on initiatives, thank you. We've grown by 25% in terms of membership in the last 2 years, and we're continuing that really positive trajectory. So I really think we're going to cross 400 members this year, which we haven't been that big since like 2015. So we feel really good about that. And I'm not going to stop there. I got a lot more up there. Although my team said I had to stop doing events because there were just too many of them going forward. So with that, I will stop talking, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm sorry, I know it's just like I just blast into it. That's not even everything.
I appreciate you calling me when you were going to deal with the legislature on the tax tribunal. I had the numbers that you were looking for.
Yeah, it was very helpful.
I provided them for the library too, so that they could, I think Andrea wrote a letter, or you spoke, or vice versa, I forget.
Yeah, Andrea spoke, and we wrote the comments that were read into the rules,
That is, it's not going away, and it's huge, and we just keep bringing it up because it isn't going away.
Absolutely. What happened in the committee last year was the oddest thing I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys, many of you are aware, right? The committee chair just got up in the middle of committee and just didn't come back, and then adjourned the committee from the floor. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I've worked in the legislature, right? This is my first rodeo. So anyway, but yeah, thank you for your help with that. So.
Thank you for everything you're doing. We know that it's nice to know that you're focusing a little bit more on the local stuff and trying to include us, because municipalities get lost. We know that everybody thinks that we just sit here and don't do anything, but.
Well, I certainly know that's not true, so.
We're the core. This is where it starts.
Yeah. And I really do appreciate the township, becoming an investor again a couple of years ago, and that makes a world of difference to us. And I think our old model was that local governments really only came into the LSCP as basically service providers, right? Like there was a formula based on how big you were, and you were basically viewed as like, cool, you feed into us and we'll do some stuff. We under Sarah threw out that model and said, hey, if you just want to become a regular, normal partner, we'll have you at the table. And so you guys have taken advantage of that. Of course, we'll always take more if you want to invest more after hearing tonight, but we're just happy to have you at the table, period. So thank you.
Any questions for Christopher? Okay, thank you.
And thanks again for
Appreciate
your
all that.
flexibility. I'm gonna go to my third thing now. I'm sorry. So,
Thank you. All right, that's a lot of information. Okay, now we can do community linkage. I have a few things to share. So I listened to the county meeting last night, and one of the things that you know that they've been talking about the jail, whether to build a new building or expand what they have. They do have a group that's getting together and meeting and trying to figure that out, what it's going to cost, where it would be, what, you know, how do they expand. They also said tonight that they didn't want to limit the inmate numbers, and they were noticing the judges. So while the judges have, according to the chair, while the judges have the authority to decide whether there's jail time or not, sometimes they say, well, the jail's full, so I'm going to let you go. So what the board wants to make sure is that the judges understand that there will be beds available if they have to rent them in Alger County, Iron County, wherever. They have the funds for that, and they're going to do that so that the judges don't feel that they can just let people go because there aren't any beds. So they wanted to be very clear about that. They also had 5 candidates for the position of administrator because Scott Urbish is retiring in how many days? 10 days? 8 days? So they picked 3. They had a closed session, and then I got back on this morning to listen after the closed session because, you know, you don't know how long it's going to last. So they picked 3 people. I didn't get first names, Mr. Henna, Mr. Belcher, and we all know Dennis Limata. Those were the 3 that they're going to interview Monday and Tuesday next week, or Monday and Tuesday, or Monday or Tuesday. They're going to let us know. The time will be from 6 to 10 p.m. They're asking the public to be there if they want to be. You know, it's obviously an open meeting, and they want input. The other thing that they're working on is plat books. So they've had lots of requests for them. They haven't been reprinted since 2016, and they expect to have them the end of March, I believe. Then on solid waste, I asked one of the other supervisors, because I wasn't there tonight, we had a meeting in the office here, to address 4 things with the solid waste if he would, which he said he would. They're on my phone. I had questions with their agenda tonight. So I asked him to ask, first of all, the audit did look better. They did much better. They had quite a few red marks and problems with their audit last year. They also just have one bank that they deal with for all of their funds. And I suggested that that's not a good idea. Those accounts are not insured separately. They have $100,000 CDs, 5 or 6 or 7 of them, some of their checking accounts and savings accounts and stuff. And I think all that stuff should be separated and insured, since they have millions of dollars they're worrying about. They also said they were buying a skid steer, but they didn't say how they were going to pay for it or what account it was coming out of. And they have bunches of checks that they run over the course of the year for board members and merchants, and they're running 2 or 3 checks a month for Menards and UP Propane and Getz's, and it's wasteful to have 2 or 3 checks going to board members for mileage. And they do a meeting and they get a $20 check, and then they get mileage for $15, and then it's just ridiculous. So I think that accounting needs to look at that. So I asked Gary if he wouldn't mind just asking him about those items at tonight's meeting. And all my committees are filled except for the DDA. I do have applicants because I've been kind of under the weather. I haven't had a chance to really put them all together. I did print all the applications again. I have 3 positions open on the DDA. We do have another spot on the library board, the TAC committee. Typically that's just 1 person, and we've been having 2 just because 2 people did volunteer. So there sort of is a second position open, so I have an application for that, and I will be looking at that. So that's what I've been working on. Are you hearing anything from the public, Dan?
I just have one question. You talked about the interviews for the administrator. I didn't catch the date and time?
Monday, Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday?
It's gonna be one or the other. They're gonna check with all three candidates and see if they're available. They'd like to do it all in one day if possible, either Monday or Tuesday. If it looks like they have to split it up, then they can, but they'll be held from 6 to 10. And they have those 2 days set aside.
And that'll be in
Next week.
chambers?
In there, yeah. Yep. And that, there is a Zoom for that too, if anybody wants it. I usually get it, or it's on the website.
Okay.
So if you don't want
I'll
to
talk to Joe. too.
get there in person, you can watch it, and you can comment. It's an open Zoom for the public. Okay, let's get through some policy discussion stuff. Consider the master plan progress invoice. Mr. Manager.
Most of the invoices we've been receiving for this project have been well within my purchasing capacity. And it is for work that's been previously approved, but this is right at my limit. And I thought, for the sake of transparency, we would put it on the regular agenda for you to act on it, instead of just hiding it in the consent agenda. It's work that we know has been completed. It's just a bigger progress pay request this time. I move to make the payment.
Support. Support.
Okay, motion and support. Questions for John? Okay.
So just so the public is clear, this is out of some grant that we received, so it's not coming out of our budget per se. It's
Well,
a
it is in the
grant.
budget, but we received a
a grant.
$50,000 grant, of which the entirety is applied to this contract. And it is housing focused in our master plan update this year.
Good question. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Next up is the trailhead parking lot proposals.
Normally, we wouldn't be in such a hurry to get a project like this to you for consideration, but we have a contractor that happens to be anxious to get going. Actually, both of them said they would get going, weather permitting, as soon as possible once the contract is awarded. We did receive 2 proposals and a draft agreement, which our attorney has reviewed and is comfortable with. It's a pretty straightforward agreement. It's to build the parking lot for the trailhead on the Well Road. And the low cost proposal we received was from Flow Track Mountain Bike Trails. They are primarily a trail builder. But they would love to do more work locally, and I think their quote represents that. $45,089.50 on a budget of $50,000. They also included some work in here that's already done, so we will see some flexibility if something comes up that's a surprise or gives us an opportunity to maybe change the scope a little bit. But if that does happen to any significant degree, you'll know about it before we agree to doing it. So the goal is to get approximately 30 parking stalls in this parking lot. So it's not a huge trailhead. It's a nice supplement trailhead for township residents to get to the higher part of the trail system. The pavilion is almost complete. Those college kids have been going nonstop through all the weather. I think they probably take a little time off when it gets cold, like it's been the last couple of days, but the roof is on. They had siding and garage doors to install the last time I was out there. It's gonna look awesome.
And there's a presentation when they get finished, Lori said. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, they've been gathering photos throughout the progress. Very motivated small group of college kids that will be graduating, and unfortunately they'll probably all leave the area. Although one of them is local, so maybe he'll stay.
Okay, what's your pleasure?
I move to award the Well Road Trailhead parking lot improvements to Ford Track in the amount of $45,089.50 and authorize the manager to review and approve the contract, subject to legal review.
And that's been done.
Support.
Okay. Motion and second. Questions? John?
I did give a copy to the supervisor to sign if you would like to amend that motion accordingly.
Okay, so moved.
I have it here. Linda, did you have, or what did I say, did you have handout? Okay, thought I saw somebody's handout. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, consider paid sick time for part-time staff.
I'm not really sure what we should do on this based on what Christopher just said, but I think you should at least take some proactive action in the event nothing happens. And that is authorize staff, which is Kim, to start allocating 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked for part-time employees. That's our paid on-call firefighters, it's our election workers. It's a little bit silly if you think about those employees, because if they're not available, they don't come in anyway. But it's what the law currently says. If it's modified, we can nullify it, right? If it's modified before the enactment date, which is the 21st. So we need to authorize staff to do that. It's not something we currently provide for part-time employees and any other part-time employee we might hire in the future, assuming the law stays as it is currently written. The other thing is, it's not written in your notes here, but we realized that after the packet was finalized, we currently cap the amount of sick leave that our full-time employees can accrue. We need to remove that cap. However, we can keep the cap in place for how much we compensate our employees when they leave employment. So leave that cap, the compensation cap in place, but remove the cap on how much you can accrue. Clear as mud?
Okay.
So it's actually improving the benefit for our employees, even though it's written in their labor agreements that it's capped at 720 hours, I believe. 720 hours will remain the cap for payout when you leave. It's half of that, okay? But we have to allow them to accrue up to 10,000 hours if they work here that long, according to the law, the way it's currently written. If the law takes effect on the 21st as it's currently written.
So this isn't, we're not gonna be changing any township policies or anything until we know exactly where it's gonna end?
Yeah, we already have that portion of the policies and procedures manual marked up by our labor attorney. And it all started with an initial question about whether or not this law does apply to our paid on-call firefighters, which it does. That's why we're making this recommendation tonight. I feel like there was maybe one other part to that I'm forgetting. See if I can find it real quick without wasting too much of your time. Okay, begin crediting part-time employees with 1 hour of paid sick time for every 30 hours worked, with no cap on accrual and no compensation upon departure from the township. So that's the key difference for part-time employers. When you leave, or part-time employees, when you leave, you don't get compensated for any of that if you have any on the books. Full-time employees, you get compensated for up to half of 720 hours. Okay. And then the third part that I just stated out loud is we will have to remove the cap on the number of hours the employee can accrue. But we can keep the cap in place on how much we pay out when they leave.
Okay.
Clerk, is that something that we can write into a motion in the minutes, as I
Yeah.
stated?
Well, we can approve this, and then I would wait until after the legislators done arguing and see what's actually gonna happen, but.
Yeah, I would just put the caveat pending the results of
The
current
leg-
legislative action.
Yeah. So I'll move that we do that, authorize staff to begin crediting part-time employees with 1 hour paid sick time for every 30 hours worked, with no cap on accrual and no compensation upon departure from the township, effective February 21st, 2025. And remove the cap for full-time employees, but do not remove the compensation cap.
Perfect.
And that's, will be my motion.
Okay.
Support.
Questions? Clear as mud, right?
So how many employees do we have?
I don't know that total number.
No.
If you're talking full-time and part-time combined.
Just
In
folks.
fact, if I knew it coming in, it might have changed that quickly with, the fire department is a constant revolving door these days, unfortunately.
How many full-time employees do we have?
22?
Okay, thank you.
Roughly 30 with the fire department.
Plus or minus, and then election workers is about a dozen-ish.
Yeah, 10 maybe, yeah. It revolves too, depends who I can get and such.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Next up is just a discussion item on Renovari. We know, well, I typed up a little chronology just to fill everybody in on where we are. This is not an action item. That doesn't mean if somebody wants to make a motion, that's up to you, but that's not the intent. It's just to have the discussion so we know what's coming up. We know the importance and the need for housing in the township, the county, the state, and the nation. Almost 2 years ago, the board was presented with a unique plan to address some of the housing needs to be built on property the township currently owns. We received an option agreement to purchase our 5 acres adjacent to Schwemmwood Park for $500,000. We signed a 1-year agreement to keep the property off of the market and allow the developer to go through the process of building a 48-unit housing project. The project would be a planned unit development geared to workforce housing. During this time, the project went through preliminary and final PUD approvals with the Planning Commission. The board recently had a work session to learn that the development has evolved into a nearly $14 million project and that we would not receive any tax dollars on the property for the term of the tax increment financing of 25 to 35 years. The developers have asked for and been granted 2 6-month extensions on the original agreement, the latest one to expire this April 10th. The board has stated in the past that the disposition of the funds from the sale of the property, whoever buys it, would be used to pay down the debt of our township hall, the fire hall, and the public works building. In the past, we've had developers ask us to provide discounts or allowances so they can build a project. We have had developers ask us to intervene with other governmental agencies to help with their project. We are not in the development business. The township is here to collect taxes, maintain order, and provide public services. That's our job. We are the trustees of taxpayer funds. As a charter township, we are mandated to do and not do specific things under state law. Our duty is to the health, safety, and welfare of our community. With all this information, I thought it prudent that the board have a conversation prior to the expiration of the agreement, so we are prepared to make an educated decision on the next step. Knowing the County Brownfield Authority will probably approve the project if the township believes it's a viable endeavor, it's important for us to let them know our direction. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions on what I said? Okay. So, from the work session that we had here a month or whatever, 2 ago, we know that they're going to probably ask for another extension. They've asked the Brownfield Authority for an extension for their decision, so they haven't met yet. And I don't know when they'll come back to us or if we'll get something in writing. Again, this is not for a decision, but if there are things you want to say or don't say, or you want to just move on, that's totally fine. I just wanted to have the conversation. John?
I just want to add, I think you've stated all of the facts pretty succinctly. But really where I feel the township stands is letting Renovare know whether or not you support what they want to do. And that is this very long-term TIF. It was originally proposed at 30 years. I believe they may have reduced it to 25 in the most recent numbers that we haven't seen, which means the TIF will go another 5 years after that. So you're still at 30 because the last 5 years go to help fund the Brownfield Authority at the county. Is it worth it? That's what I think you really have to decide. Is it worth not seeing revenue on that property for another 30 years? You're not currently seeing revenue on the property because it's owned by the township. Is that housing important enough for the potential lost revenue for that duration? Most of the TIFs that we've had in the township have been significantly shorter duration, in the 5 to 10 year range. Housing's a little bit different, and the challenge right now is building anything affordably. So I do think that you have to consider going beyond 5 years. Is it worth going beyond 10 years? I think you could argue this many ways. It depends on what you feel is most important. I think their offer is at 25. You may want to counter with something lower. That's my opinion.
Okay, thanks for that.
So I just have, we are in the middle of doing a master plan. And when those surveys were sent out, the master plan survey data that was collected said housing is a huge issue in the township. And I don't have the information in front of me because I didn't know we were having this discussion. And maybe that's my fault that I didn't look at it. Right, it's on the agenda. So I guess I would ask Jason to bring those numbers forward. I think the township board needs to know what the master plan is, what that data says. I think that's important. And I think Lake Superior Community Partnership has some data as well as to what people are looking for. Whether it's worth a 30-year TIF or not, I don't know that today, but I don't think that we would get zero tax dollars if they bought that.
The land sale would be included in the TIF.
Okay, so the other part that I understood, and maybe incorrectly, was if after owning the residence for 5 years I sold it, then the TIF, it gets uncapped and people pay higher taxes. So could potentially, that would be the question, could half of the residents sell their residence prior to 30 years and then we would pay off the TIF sooner? Is that correct?
Hypothetically, yes.
So
I
this
think
is-
it's impossible to predict how many of them would. But that's another thing that you need to consider is, I believe they said 3 years would be,
Well, they said 5.
They said 5.
They said
It's
5
typical.
once, but they said it was
It's up to
us.
us.
So, so I think there's lots of things to consider, and a lot of the stuff is hypothetical. You don't even know that there will be businesses hiring people looking for housing. I do know, I listened to a presenter at the Econ Club on Monday night, and he said, I think I have this correct, that housing is an issue to getting employees to work for his business in our county. Housing's an issue. Affordable housing for what our wages allow people to pay. I don't know if anyone else went to the Econ Club?
No, but they've been saying that even in Chocolate Township, the person they wanted to hire couldn't find a place to live.
Correct.
So I don't know what they ended up doing. We're gonna make another offer, I guess, and try to make some kind of
If
arrangement.
they're gonna get them housing.
Maybe, I don't know.
So I mean, I think there's lots of things to consider. I do know that we are fortunate to have the Veterans Facility being built in our community, and they will not be paying taxes. And they didn't ask us if They haven't come to us with anything. I mean, I think we're happy to have them, but that's a 30-year commitment of no taxes.
That's
Probably
as long
longer.
as it exists. The state doesn't pay the taxes.
What's considered low or moderate housing? I personally, I don't believe that these are gonna be selling for a moderate price.
I think they have to tell us that, Dan.
They did tell us in
they
their
told us.
presentation a month ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
5 different levels.
Yeah, there's
I'm
levels.
not sure if that's moderate, in my opinion.
Well, I don't know that that's something that we have to worry about. They've proposed something. My biggest concern is the delicate funding stack on this project. So if 10 years is the number that you're comfortable with on a TIF, and that makes their project unviable, are you willing to see it go away? So it's a balancing
Yeah.
act. You have to decide how important this housing is in your community.
I feel housing is very important in this community, but a 30-year TIF, they won't get my vote on that, period. That's my opinion, that's how I feel. I don't feel that the taxpayers of this township should have to wait 30 years to get tax on that. That's just
Fair
my-
statement. I think it's very,
But it isn't even just the township. It's
sorry?
it's the rest of the county too. It's
Yeah.
911 and senior
It is. It's
services and
everybody.
library
It's
and
everybody.
everybody. It's not just us.
I'll be dead by then, for sure.
All of us might be
And
gone.
it's
Who
just,
knows?
I might be dead by then.
it's way too long to make our taxpayers wait. If we could sell that, and we did have other interested parties a while back. Probably not interested anymore, I don't know. I don't even know who they were, to be honest with you. But I think we should just take it, put it back on the market after April and move on. That's my opinion.
they could still purchase the property and not have an agreement on the TIF. Just so you're aware.
Okay.
They could ask to buy the property.
They could, but I think the intention is to include the land sale in the TIF. So one does hinge on the other. And like I said, it's a very delicate balancing act on how they're trying to fund this project, because how do you build workforce housing without it being supplemented somehow? And this is one of the ways they are hoping to do it.
Well, and Marquette Township doesn't have to solve the housing problems. It's not, you know, we're doing what we're allowed to do by helping developers to a point. But it doesn't have to be, you know, this is not the end all. It's not like if we don't approve this, we're done. You know, there's no housing ever. It's not like this is the end.
It isn't for anyone.
Something else will come up, you know.
Yeah, that could be. But they could purchase the property, and then they can build whatever they want on it.
Yep, that's right.
Whatever they want that meets our requirements.
Right, well,
Well,
ordinances,
right.
zoning, whatever the
Yes.
state laws are, right. Yeah.
Primarily zoning, site plan requirements.
Yep. What were you
It
gonna
was
say,
my
Randy?
understanding
We can
that
divide that.
after the last extension, that was our last one.
We said that's gonna be it. So,
That was kind of the consensus, but it wasn't, you know, put in writing or anything. It wasn't a motion, so I just wanna, it's just only fair to let these organizations know what we're thinking. Because we weren't part of the discussion in the very beginning. And it's evolved so much since then. The prices, the $236,000 kind of workforce price is up to 50 or 60 now. So it's changing partly because of the length of time, you know, and building materials, and we know what that is.
that's not our fault.
No, I'm just saying, it has changed in 2 years, so.
Randy had a question.
Yeah, Randy, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, with the last work session, and I did watch it, but I was here for part of it and I had to leave, but I just think that my screen. Again, Lynn is correct. The township, and I've even stated this in the past, the township, we're not in the housing development business. We are not that. We provide the essential services and the core services of the township. We try to help developers if we can, but and it's a good balance between the housing and other things, but in my mind, I cannot approve a 30-year TIF. That is not, I can't stomach a 30-year TIF. A 10-year maybe, but I have to see what the rest of the board thought on that, because we did approve some smaller TIFs in the past. But a 30-year TIF, they will not get my vote for that, because again, I'm the youngest one here, and I'll probably be dead by the time that TIF comes off. And I can't commit future boards to a no tax situation for the next 30 years, 35 years. I mean, we've been hit hard with the dark stores, and I just think we would do a disservice to the township residents if we just carte blanche say, yeah, you can buy the property, we're gonna give you a 30-year TIF on it, we get no taxes for 30 years. I think that's a disservice to the taxpayers of this township. So that's where I stand.
And affordable housing is just for the first purchase of it. 'Cause then after whatever it comes out to, 5 years, they can sell it for,
Market rate.
yeah. You really haven't solved the affordable housing thing.
No.
Other than a very short time, but we're on the hook, or taxpayers on the hook for 30 years.
And not all the 48 units are workforce housing.
Right.
Like you said, there's
Yeah, it's
different
only
levels.
a few of them.
Yeah, so it's not, like you said, it's not solving the problem. So we're putting all of our eggs in one basket for 30 years and saying we're gonna, shoot the dice. For what?
Right.
It's not a huge benefit for the township.
And that's what we have to really think about, is the township,
Yep.
the residents. They're the ones that voted us in.
Well, too, like, if you have 48 units and they're full, that's increased population for the township. They're gonna have services to be provided, and they're not paying for some of those services since it's a TIF. They're not gonna, pay for some of that stuff. They'll pay for their water and sewer and such, but for general fund money, they're not gonna pay for some of that stuff, so.
They are paying for it, it's just we aren't the ones collecting.
Yeah. Well, it's not coming to us for
Correct.
our services.
Right.
It's going to the developer, correct? Yeah,
Till they're paid off.
yeah.
So do we wanna make a statement, or we just wanna wait to see what happens April 10th, or what's your pleasure?
Well, I think maybe you can communicate with them that we had a discussion. They can watch it. It's gonna be online after tonight. The ball's in their court, see what they'd like to do. That's what my recommendation would be. We haven't made we haven't made a motion, or we just discussed it generally. Hopefully they've kind of got the pulse of things, and maybe they can come and make an offer, or say we're done.
Okay,
I would agree with that.
sounds good. John?
Just one last thing, a reminder that this residential TIF idea is brand new. So you're considering this option very early on in its availability as a tool for a developer. So it's not necessarily going to be a comfortable discussion for anybody. It's what they're proposing, and if you can't come to terms on that, the sooner they know, the better.
And with the current political climate in Washington, we don't know what's going to happen in the next year or two, because federal agencies are getting dismantled as we speak. We don't know about the funding. We don't even know if there's going to be funding for housing in the future, because things are just happening in Washington so fast right now. We don't know. So maybe it's prudent just to hold back a little bit and see where it goes.
Consensus? That's okay?
Prudent to hold back, but not to necessarily extend our April
No,
deadline.
no.
Okay. John?
That's also very important. If there's consensus from the board that another time extension on the purchase option is out the window, that might be all they need to know. If they need more time and you're not willing to give them that, that might be the last piece of information they need.
I think we already said that.
I think that's pretty much I don't want to speak, but
You can
I get
speak.
that as a consensus.
If you can't speak, who can?
Well, I get that as a consensus. I can only speak for one, but
No, when I made the motion last year to extend that agreement,
It said, did we have a motion?
I specifically said there was gonna be nothing more beyond what they asked for.
and I was the only opposing vote.
Yes, you were.
I was too.
Oh,
There were two,
Yeah.
okay.
no, I said basically give them a year to figure it out where they need to go, and here we are at a year already.
6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not even, there, and since we've had that work session with the additional information of the 30-year TIF, 25 to 30-year TIF, that we didn't have when we made the extension offer, that's more information that we have now that we didn't have in the past. So,
So really, we're just waiting for them to come back and say, we can meet our deadline or we can't meet our deadline. That's it.
Well, they've got to go through Brownfield first.
But they're the ones that have to come to us. We don't have anything to do with that part. And they might come with a check for the land. And they might not, and they might say it's not gonna work.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think we already, I thought Randy made the motion.
Yes, I
So
did.
it's out there.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
okay. We're good?
We're good.
Okay. Thanks for that.
oh,
Ernie
Ernie,
wanted to talk.
Ernie has
If I had
public
looked down,
comment.
I didn't have a chance to look at my sheet. I would have seen you. Thanks.
Ernie Johnson, 1962 West Fair Avenue, and that, most of the things you talked about is what I was concerned with, and that. The biggest thing is, it'll be 2 years in April if we do it. That, to me, is the extent of it, and that. They can't come up with funding that, they're not gonna come up with funding another 6 months or another year or 2 years. It just not is what's happening in that, so. As a resident, I would say, we going to do it, want to buy it for 500,000? Give us a check, 500,000, you do with it what you want. And that, you meet the township, whatever they want. Housing is important, affordable housing is important, but I really question, what is affordable housing? For who? And that's the next question in that, when you look at it overall in that, so. And then when they talk 25 to 35 years, that's utterly ridiculous in that. Because your township residents are gonna be footing everything for 25 to 35 years before you get any money back in that. Anyone that says different, they have to just sit back and look at the budgets and where the dollars go for the general fund and that. So my feeling is, I would not support going back with any additional extension on their development at all at this point in time. I think housing is important in the area, but not at this price for the townships and that. So that's kind of what I had to say. You talked about most of it over with, but that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay. Any committee updates? Don't really have any. Did Recreation meet yesterday? Okay. All right. Any other public comment? Anybody wish to come on up, Antonio?
Good evening, everyone. Really enjoyed listening to the discussion had tonight about the Renovari project, so I will not speak about that project. I'm not representing the developer, I'm just here to speak on behalf of the housing specialist role. We've gone through a few projects right now. Just want to report to the board just in general what's happening throughout the county. We have one project that the land bank was involved in that involved a housing TIF plan. In fact, it's one of the first in the city of Marquette that has seen the new housing tax increment finance plan. That plan is for Chippewa Square, 14, it's a conversion building, Class A office space, going to be renovated to 14 apartments, right? The beauty of that one is that that developer was able to take that building, go through the plan set, get the bids, and go through a TIF plan that started at 23 years. And with the grant that I helped write and that we were able to successfully go through MISTA, the authority's requirements, we may be able to lessen that to about 13 years. We're just waiting on the final tables. It's a sensitive topic, so I want to be careful, but the city of Marquette has seen brownfield plans, and now the county and the city of Marquette will see future housing TIF plans. So I think it's best practice to continue to have these conversations amongst local units, amongst our experts, our consultants, and the developers. So I appreciate the discussion tonight. I think it's important to know what's going on, keep that line of communication open, right? And hopefully it yields to ultimately what the goal is with more housing. I think everybody here agrees that tonight that's what we want to see, and the rest is for discussion. But that's all I really wanted to say. I think it's a new tool. It's not going to go away, and that's kind of my main point tonight is we're going to see some of these plans come with 30-year plans, even through the brownfield for the county. We're going to see them come at 5 or 10 years. Every local unit gets to decide. Every governing township board gets to decide and potentially even negotiate this term. However, it really becomes important to analyze what that community really needs. And the reason I'm excited about some of these projects is because, for me, my role is to try to spearhead and be a catalyst for some of these projects that could be happening a little faster, but it's incredibly challenging, and it continues to be challenging. And I do keep up with data, keep up with the market, keep up with things that are happening locally, and it's not improving at this point. The cost continues to be high. So what I would want to leave you with tonight from my perspective is that consider that your community needs are going to be different, but at the same time, there's an opportunity potentially for housing. So where does it feel right? What's the temperature? And what are your alternatives? So I appreciate your time tonight, and thank you for having that discussion. I think it's important.
Great, thank you. Appreciate you coming.
That was one of the things that I had picked up on in our last work session. It seems like if we were able to renovate an existing blighted property or something, it has a lot more appeal. You're able to take a building that's in lousy condition, fix it up and make it very nice. For the property that we have proposed to sell, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's a really good piece of property. Maybe there's another solution for something that can go on there.
Exactly.
It benefits
Move
everybody.
on with it.
That benefits everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Any announcements from the board? Nothing to share? Okay. Manager's report?
I don't think I
Nothing to
actually have
share?
anything else to add tonight.
Okay.
We've been keeping busy, but not ready to give you any updates beyond what you've already heard.
Okay. Randy, if you want to do our motions, please.
Yeah, the first motion was to approve the consent agenda. That was approved. The second motion was to approve the regular agenda as presented. That was approved. The third motion was to approve the master plan progress invoice. That was approved. The fourth motion was to approve the trailhead parking lot proposal, and that was approved. And the fifth motion was to approve the paid sick time for part-time staff and correct the sick time for full-time staff, and that was approved.
Okay, perfect. So next meeting, we will have Travel Marquette to give us their annual report. And I'm sure there'll be something else to add to the agenda. Board member comments?
Yeah, I got something, Lynn.
Randy, go ahead.
So I was talking with my father, and we're talking about the sewer issue that we had over, I think it's Center Street, John?
That was
Fair.
Fair Avenue.
Fair Avenue? Well, regardless if it's Center Fair, whatever. I mean, it's the same issue as, we have a huge fund balance, and some residents don't understand why we have a huge fund balance in the utility funds. And we have it for situations like that just occurred, because this could be a $30 to $40 to $50,000 expenditure by the time we're done with this. And that's why we have the money to cover it. Where some people say, well, why don't you have, why is your fund balance that big? And I explain that to them, that if we don't have that, we have to go to the bank either to borrow the money, or we have to assess the residents that are local there. And that's, that wouldn't be very good. So I'm just going to leave you with this. There's a reason why we have fund balances in our utility funds. This winter hasn't been horrible, but winters can be bad. And the water fund and the sewer fund have to have those balances. So if we have emergencies, we don't have to go to the bank and borrow money or raise your rates so high that the room will be full. So I'm just going to leave you with that. That's the reason why we have big fund balances.
Okay, John?
Our fund balances are not big. They might look big in terms of your own personal household budget, but they are significantly inadequate for us to replace our infrastructure when we need to. In fact, we're looking at some upgrades on our booster stations. We're gonna have to finance that. We don't have enough money in the bank to do it ourselves. We need, let's call it 2.3 to 2.5 million to purchase 16% of the water treatment plant. That's step one. That would drain our water fund. We'd be broke. And we haven't even touched the booster stations yet. And if we're going down this path to purchase ownership of the existing, let's call it unlimited capacity aquifer, which is Lake Superior, versus the very limited aquifer we have out by the golf course that we're competing with the golf course for the water. So 2.3 to 2.5 right off the bat, plus another, I forget what the numbers are, I'm just gonna say 3 to 4 million per booster station times 2. We don't have that money in the bank, so our fund balances are significantly inadequate. If we could pay cash, then we have enough. That's all.
And winter's not over.
Well, we
No.
did that a few
Sorry.
years ago when we had pipes breaking and
A
people
lot of
running
shit could happen, yeah.
their faucets and stuff.
I don't need another 2014 in my life right now.
No,
Yeah.
no.
It was,
Well, the good thing, Dan, is supposed to be 35 on Sunday, so that's good. And I'm going to clear a misnomer. When the temperature's above freezing, it doesn't drive the frost down further. The frost actually starts coming up. And the sun doesn't drive it down further. It actually, that's a misnomer that people think. When the temperature's above freezing, the frost will come up.
But it doesn't stop moving and going the opposite direction instantaneously.
No.
So the core temperature of that mini surface of the Earth's crust doesn't just change with the sun or the temperature, right? So while it might warm up for a week, that frost is still pretty cold. The ground is really cold. It can continue to go down, but it's not what's happening above the ground forcing it to continue to move.
Yeah.
It's just what's already in the ground is going to continue to move until it reaches equalization, and then eventually it's gone.
So you mentioned water treatment plants?
Mhm.
Is there any movement on that?
I would probably have a better update for you tomorrow, but it's my belief it's going on possibly the next city commission agenda.
So that may be the future agenda item?
Maybe.
Possibly. That'd come from John's
It
office.
might be an update in March, one of the March meetings.
Okay,
Yep.
that's important to
'Cause I
our
think the
residents.
Commission still meets one more time this month.
okay. Dan?
With everybody's knowledge now of frost and how it works, I have one final motion.
Well, all I was gonna say was that I wanted to thank, and she's gone, I wanted to thank our financial director because she's made the financials look the way we're used to seeing them. And I know she struggled and worked really hard with that, with spreadsheets and updates to the software and stuff, and I didn't know she was gone, but kudos to how hard she worked to make it easy for us. But
Perfect.
No.
With that, I will make a final motion that we adjourn.
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
7:10.
7:10.